Hello ladies and gentlemen, we are here with round 1 of the Doncaster Winner Box tournament. Exciting because Roaring Skies is legal. Now historically speaking the set has been out for a week, so if you're watching this in the future we're in the boundaries crossed on format. Roaring Skies has just been released and what we see here is round 1 from a Winner Box tournament where people are going to be using Roaring Skies, so we get to see the new decks. And if you're watching this shortly after it's been uploaded, we don't have much information about Roaring Skies at the moment. We haven't seen many games with Roaring Skies played and being legal, because it's not going to be legal for another couple of weeks. So this is an opportunity for a lot of people to see these games. And these aren't testing games, these are people that know what they're doing, these are good players. There's many Worlds quality players at this tournament, many people at this tournament who already have their Worlds invite. We've got former national champions playing here, and we've got people who are, testing their decks and, playing for a box of the new set. That is the eventual prize for the winner. So we are talking people who are, testing their deck and really trying to do well. These aren't silly little testing games. These are ones people are trying to figure out. So on the left we have Shivam, who is going to be playing Shaymin and... oh, that is not a great Juniper there. Shivam is going to be playing Shaymin Seismitoad, and on the right we have Luke Kirkham. He of the blog victory-road.co, and he is going to be playing the new Rayquaza deck. So a good start here from Shivam. He's got the laser there. Luke has started a Pikachu, if you can't see that because of the glare. The reason Luke's playing is I think he's playing a 2-2 Pikachu line in this deck, because obviously Rayquaza itself, and you see Shivam there hits a heads on the Super Scoop Up to save the Shaymin. Not only is that going to stop it being KO'd and get Seismitoad into the active, but it also means he can bench it and use setup to draw until he's got 6 cards into his hand. Reason Luke's playing a 2-2 Raichu line is for things like Rayquaza and of course Shaymin, which are weak to lightning, and Luke can take advantage of that by running Raichu, which attacks just for a single double colourless energy. I know that sounds a little bit weird, single, but I assure you it works. And, he can take advantage of these things like, Sandering up Shaymin or beating Rayquaza in the mirror. So Shivam here is really demonstrating what this new Seismitoad Shaymin deck can do. Essentially, Seismitoad Slurpuff, and I know I pronounced that wrong, I am very, very sorry, has been basically taken away and replaced with Seismitoad Shaymin, and you see how fast it is, how many cards he's digging through. It's turn 1, he's got 2 Seismitoad down, he's got a DCE on the active, he's got a Muscle Band on both of them, and you'll also notice that he's got a lot of Super Scoop Ups. He's playing his hammers, so Luke's going to have to be careful here. Now the Super Scoop Ups aren't a huge problem in terms of he said there's a Team Flare Grunt as well. Super Scoop Ups aren't going to be a huge problem for Luke in terms of healing, because Luke's Rayquaza deck is going to be aiming to KO those Seismitoads in one hit. The problem is that Shivam can use those Super Scoop Ups to get his, as you just saw there, he just used one, get his Shaymin back, and draw more cards. He's got Laser, and there's a Verbank City Gym, which he's been searching for. We've got Laser, and we've got... Crushing Hammer. I haven't seen one, I think he plays them, but we've certainly got Enhanced Hammer, and we've got Team Flare Grunt, and we've got probably a Xerosic in there as well to get rid of energy. Now it looks like he might have just drawn an extra card or so from the Shaymin was the last thing he put down. They're just chatting it over with a judge now. But it gives us an opportunity to have a quick bit of a chat while they're going on. So the whole point of Shivam's deck is, and I'm sorry Shivam if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, met him yesterday, absolutely lovely chap, very, very good Pokemon player. Not a chap I was familiar with before, but a really nice chap, really good Pokemon player. So if I am pronouncing your name wrong, I can only apologise. And essentially, his deck works around kind of like the basic Seismitoad principles, which have been in play for quite a while now. I've got Seismitoad, I'm going to be using Quaking Punch for a DCE to do 30 damage and stop you using Trainers the following turn. I am going to have a Muscle Band on, so I'm doing 50. I'm going to use Laser and Verbank to add poison damage, and then, similar to the Seismitoad Slurpuff deck, I am going to be playing a bunch of Super Scoop Ups to stop you killing my Pokemon, and I'm going to be playing a bunch of Energy Denial cards to stop you getting a bunch of energy. To try and slow you down, so my 8 to 50 damage plus poison, which is of course 80, that is going to effectively stop you playing. Now, Seismitoad Slurpuff, and I've talked about this before, and go back and watch my videos from Nottingham Regionals. which I popped on my channel recently. If you go back and look at Nottingham Regionals, you'll see Seismitoad Slurpuff. And I've said this on the podcast as well, PTCGRadio. You can find it on my YouTube channel or on iTunes. And what I've often said about that deck is it's a good game. It's a good deck. But the problem is you're relying on drawing with Slurpuff. So if you don't have Slurpuff out, you're not going to be drawing enough cards early. As soon as you've got your Slurpuff out, you're drawing many cards a turn until you get them out. You're a little bit weak because you're essentially getting rid of your supporter cards in order to make way for the Slurpuff and all of your energy denial cards and your super scoop ups, etc. But as we've seen in games from Nottingham Regionals, you can come from 5 prizes down to win. The Shaymin Seismitoad deck does not work like that. As you've just seen, Shivam go through about half of his deck. It is super fast. So you get around all of those problems. So if you get your Shaymin down, and you're still not playing that many supporter cards, but you're playing, 4 Shaymin, you're playing your 4 Ultra Ball. Now, you still haven't got as many outs on turn 1 as I would like. Let's say you're playing, 5 supporters, say 4 Juniper and an N, which is about what a lot of people seem to be playing in the early lists. You've got, your 5 supporters, plus your computer search, that's 6 outs. With 4 Shaymin, 4 Ultra Ball, you're up to 14 outs. So you're getting up there, but you're still slightly less than you might like. But hey-ho, as you can see, as soon as you get that first Shaymin, you run through your deck. And then you play trump card to put them all back in again. And it really is quite an impressive deck. The over-reliance on Shaymin can be a problem, because if you're putting Wobbuffet, say you come across somebody playing Wobbuffet being a Pokemon that, if active, stops all non-psychic Pokemon using abilities on both sides of the field. However, that's the big problem with Shaymin. Now, there's not going to be all that many people playing Wobbuffet, or will there? But the thing is, like I say, that's going to hurt Shaymin. But however, like I say, he's not playing against a Wobbuffet here, and that means that he's able to really get going in a fairly impressive way. It also leads to some very, very long turns. Now, again, Judge coming over and making a ruling. I want to say Shivam drew too many cards or too few. I honestly did. It's hard to see. Yes, there seems to be 7 cards there in his hand, and Shaymin allows you to draw up till 6. So what they seem to be doing is probably going to put a random card back. And there's other cards there, because the problem being, when he drew the cards with Shaymin, we don't know which cards he drew and which ones he should have drawn and which ones he shouldn't have drawn. So the problem is, if you just if you don't reverse stuff, then maybe he has the Burbank City Gym down, and maybe he shouldn't have had that. We don't know if he had the Burbank City Gym in his hand or not, so it's not going to be fair. So what they're doing here, and if anyone's seen this better than I have, please feel free to put it in the comments. It is hard to follow these things, sometimes going through all of it. What's essentially happened is, I believe Shivam's drawn too many cards. Luke has got a prize penalty. Shivam has had some cards put back on the top of his deck at random, and now he gets to carry on with his turn. Now, the Burbank City Gym didn't get put back, so the Burbank City Gym goes down, and then he can keep drawing, and I wonder what he's going to see with the Acro Bike. And that's perfect, because he's gotten rid of Lissandra's trump card, because you don't want that in your deck. You want it in your discard pile, so you can VS Seeker for it later. And that's going to be very important for Shivam's deck, so that he can get all of his cards back, because he's going to run through his deck some fast. So after all of that, he's got 3 Toads down, 2 of a Muscle Band, 1 with a DCE, he's got the Verbank, he's got the Laser. Lucas flipped Tails on Laser. Now, he's not trainer locked here, and that's very, very important, because Shivam went first and couldn't do anything on the first turn of the game, so he's not trainer locked. But that Pikachu, I think, has got 60 HP. It is going to die from poison going into Shivam's turn, which is pretty bad. Now, Luke's playing a Battle Compressor here. If it looks like his deck is giant, that's because Luke is playing with Japanese sleeves, and what people like to, and fairly gorgeous Japanese sleeves, I might add. And what a lot of people like to do with Japanese sleeves is you can get these clear sleeves that fit over the sleeves, so that when you're shuffling, it's the clear sleeves that take the damage, not the Japanese sleeves, and you get to kind of keep your beautiful sleeves in good condition for far longer. That makes your deck giant. So if it looks like Luke's playing a giant man-sized deck, I mean, Luke is a man-sized man. I don't know if that's a weird comment to make, but I've made it and I'm going with that. And he's got a man-sized deck. Let's put it that way. Luke, if you're listening and that was a bit rude, gutted. So Luke's playing the Rayquaza deck, and what it aims to do is get Mega Rayquaza EX out with free energy to do 30 damage times by the number of bench Pokemon you have. Now there goes Skyfield, the stadium which allows you to have up to 8 bench Pokemon, and of course Luke is going to need 6 bench Pokemon to do 180 damage to KO the Seismitoad. That's going to be very important. So what Luke needs to do is get free energy. He needs to get a Spirit Link so he can evolve the Rayquaza to Mega Rayquaza without having to, he's playing a Juniper here, without having to end your turn. Now it looks like he's got the Spirit Link. Mega Rayquaza EX has Delta Evolution, which allows him to evolve the turn you put it down, or indeed on the first turn of the game. Now he's got a double colourless there. What Luke needs here is essentially a switch, and I think he only plays the one. He's going to need a Mega Turbo, which allows you to attach basic energy from your discard pile to one of your Mega Pokemon. And you saw he discarded a basic Grass energy with Battle Compressor earlier on. And he's going to need the Mega Rayquaza himself. So using the combination of I'm presuming that's probably what he's gone for there. But he's going to need another basic, because I'm assuming he's gone for the Mega Evolution, because I think I saw a Mega Turbo in his hand. I could be wrong. So he wants to evolve up to the Mega Turbo. The combination of Delta Evolution and a Spirit Link mean he can evolve straight away. And yes, I was correct, he did go for that. And he did have a Mega Turbo in his hand. So he's got the free energy out. And he's really going to want a Shaymin here. He needs to get a Shaymin down. Now, there is a VS Seeker. And he's going to play it now because he's going to be Trainer Locked next turn. He's already played a supporter. And he's going to go for the Juniper. My apologies about that quick glitch there. I leant on the keyboard. And, of course, the Pikachu isn't going to die going into Shivam's turn, although it is still asleep, because the Skyfield came out. And this is where things are going to get very, very annoying. We see the Crushing Hammer. Now, it depends how many Enhanced Hammer he's playing, or if indeed he's playing it at all. I believe he is, because what he really would have wanted to do there is go for the Crushing Hammer on the Grass energy, draw an Enhanced Hammer to get rid of the DCE, and get rid of all of Luke's energy. Because if Luke gets 6 bench Pokemon and can keep some energy on his Rayquaza, he will win this game. Seismitoad's doing 50 damage per turn plus laser. It's not enough to take down big, beefy Mega EXs. They've got a lot of HP. So what Shivam needs to do is essentially stop Luke playing. Get rid of all of his energy, try and get Headringers down, although we saw he had to Juniper 2 Headringers at the beginning of the game. Most Seismitoad decks tend to play around 2, but with the Spirit Link on the Mega Rayquaza, Shivam would have to hit a Startling Megaphone as well, and most decks only play one of them. So he's unlikely to be able to do that until Trump card comes out. So we can see here there's more Shaymins, more digging through the deck. You'll notice that Shivam has got 6 bench Pokemon here, but again, Skyfield is out, so that makes no difference. If Skyfield were to leave the field of play, Shivam would have to discard one of those, but he could just discard one of those Shaymin and then trump card it back in later, so it's not a huge deal. Now, crucially here, Shivam has only so far gotten rid of 1 double colourless energy. Now, I can't see his hand very well. I believe I saw him play an Enhanced Hammer earlier. Maybe he knows he's got none in his deck. Because clearly, it's going to be much easier for Shivam it's going to be much easier for Luke to get a basic Grass than it is to get a double colourless energy. Partly because he can Mega Turbo, and partly because he's probably going to be playing maybe slightly more of that. So he was going to play 3 of them in a row just to empty his hand so he could draw more by playing the Shaymin. He appears to have changed his mind. So the Pikachu dies from Quaking Punch, and now we got the Rayquaza up. So Luke needs 2 energy, and this can be done with a DCE or by an energy and a Mega Turbo. And he needs to get 6 bench Pokemon down, which time he starts playing Shaymin, as we've seen with Shivam, and Luke is playing I believe a full complement of 4 Shaymin here. It's not going to be the hardest thing ever. Now, remember, of course, I'm talking about the fact Luke could get 2 energy with Mega Turbo. Of course, he can't get 2 energy with Mega Turbo while he's Trainer Locked. So I would have liked to have seen Shivam. Now, I thought I saw a Winona in his hand there. I'd like to see him go for 3 Shaymin, just to kind of fill out his bench. But Luke, he knows his deck better than I do. Now, we do see a Rayquaza in his hand, and he's got the double colourless, but the question is, does he have much else? Now, if he had the Winona in hand, I would have been a fan of going for the Winona, but then again, he's going to have a fairly full hand at that point, so he's not going to be drawing many with the Shaymin, and, 3 bench Pokemon, he's supposed to be doing 90 damage. Now, the good thing is, Luke has got 2 double colourless in his hand. But if he plays a double colourless, Shivam with his enhanced hammer and his Team Flare Grunt and his crushing hammer is probably going to be able to get rid of it. And with only 1 bench Pokemon, Luke's only doing 30 damage. He is going to be 6-hit KOing the Seismitoad. That's not going to be much good. So he's starting to build up the benched Rayquaza, and here is a very good play from Luke, because Rayquaza has an attack for 1 colourless energy that does 60 damage to an EX. So he's retreated the Mega Rayquaza, put 1 energy on the Rayquaza EX, and that has allowed him to do 60 damage to Seismitoad. Now unfortunately there is a Hypnotoxic Laser Head, which is putting him asleep. Now the other thing that Luke would be able to do is, like I say, Mega Revolve and then start doing the big attack. But the biggest problem here is, of course, that Spirit Link can't be played while you're under Trainer Lock, and if you don't play Spirit Link, then you are going to have to end your turn in order to Mega Revolve, and that's potentially going to be a problem. That's going to really slow down these particular decks here. So something to bear in mind here. Luke needs free energy on his bench Rayquaza to really start going off, and he hasn't got any energy on his bench Rayquaza at the moment. Now, Shivam there's playing 2 VS Seeker at the same time, a common play. Use 1 VS Seeker for Lissandra's trump card, and another for another supporter, so you can play Lissandra's trump card this turn, and you've got a supporter you're going to want to use the following turn. Clearly Shivam there going for the Team Flare Grunt, so he can keep getting rid of Luke's energy, because as previously mentioned, that's the only way he's going to win. Because Luke is hitting much, much harder. Now, if Luke wakes up, he can do another 60 damage to the Seismitoad, but now this is where the Super Scoop-Ups come into play. It's also why Shivam had to use Lissandra's trump card then. I don't know, I haven't been counting exactly how many Lissandra's trump cards Shivam has used, but he's going to have used a lot. He's going to have used several Lissandra's trump card. Several Super Scoop-Up. And he needs to use Lissandra's trump card to get those Super Scoop-Ups back into his deck. Because if Luke, for instance, if Luke hits him for 60 damage this turn, the Seismitoad's on 120, he'd have to wake up from the poison, of course. Then he's going to have 120 on him, and he's going to be 60 HP away from dying, i.e. 1 more attack from Rayquaza. And if Luke is getting the KO with the regular Rayquaza EX, while building up a Mega Rayquaza EX on the bench, Luke is going to win this game. Because he's only going to need to knock out 2 more Seismitoads, or even Shaymins. If he can Lysandra a Shaymin, it's only going to take 4 bench Pokemon. And there goes Skyfield for the Burbank City Gym, so that he can do more damage with the poison. Now, crucially, he hasn't got rid of that energy, so this flip is going to be crucial for Luke. And he has woken up, and that is absolutely huge here. Skyfield goes back in, and we see a double colourless on the Rayquaza, Mega Rayquaza on the bench, who now has... Does he have 3 energy on him or 2? I can't quite see. Luke's hand is in the way. So we can see another 60 damage. Now, if Luke can get the KO next turn with... And he, as I say... Oh, and he's got the Super Scoop up. He's... Yeah, I say he's going to have to go for that one. If he hits heads here, this is going to be a devastating flip for Luke. If he can hit the heads. And he can... Oh, that is gutting. Because what Luke would be, and again, now he can just put the Seismitoad back down, and he can put the double colourless back on, and he can put the muscle band back on, and it's as if Luke never did that damage. 2 turns of attacking gone, and that is utterly heartbreaking. And we see 2 lasers, which have done nothing because he was already poisoned, and they didn't come up heads for the sleep. So Shivam has now taken advantage of the extra bench space to use a Shaymin. Now there's a Xerasic, which I don't know if he's played a supporter yet, but if he hasn't played a supporter yet, he can use a Xerasic to get rid of the double colourless energy on Rayquaza, on the benched Rayquaza, and I believe that's what he is doing here. Now, he could also get rid of the Spirit Link and pop a Head Ringer on there, and then try and get Enhanced Hammer or Crushing Hammer to get rid of the free energy on there, but I think the safest play is probably going to be able to get rid of the double colourless energy. Now, I think there's a discussion here as to whether he's already played a supporter or not. I don't believe he's played a supporter yet this turn. The Lissandra's trump card, I believe, was played last turn. And the Juniper was, yes, and there we go. The Juniper was discarded with the Acrobike when he got the Super Scoop Up. So the Xerasic comes out to get rid of double colourless energy, which isn't the worst thing ever, because Luke's still got 1 energy on the Rayquaza, he's got a double colourless energy in hand. He can attach a double colourless energy, so he is attacking. And as even although that regular Rayquaza isn't going to be dead, he's got an energy on the Rayquaza. The Rayquaza's got a retreat cost of 1, so he is going to be able to retreat the Rayquaza, but he needs a supporter and he hasn't drawn one. He top decks another Skyfield. Now, Luke's got to keep attaching energy here because it's not outside the realm of possibility that Shivam could hit a Crushing Hammer next turn. We've seen that he plays them. And then we see another 60 damage on the Seismitoad. And that's why that Super Scoop Up flip was so key on the previous turn for Shivam, because Luke would now have just got 2 prizes. He would have a Rayquaza ready to... and he's just VS Seekering for the Xerasit to get rid of the DCE. And this is devastating. Now, a lot of people have been suggesting, I've read this kind of stuff on the internet, a lot of people have been suggesting that Rayquaza's going to beat Toad because all he needs is 6 bench Pokemon and free energy and boom, Toad goes down. And that is correct. Now, he gets a Shaymin there, but he's got very few cards in his hand that he can play. Now, he does all that is cool, though. He manages to draw 2 cards. One of which is a Rayquaza that he can bench, one of which is a Juniper, which he can discard. I'm refusing to acknowledge Sycamore until we rotate. I've said that before, but just to remind you. So Luke now is getting going. He needs a DCE. He's got the DCE. He's drawn his other 2 DCE. Now he's only doing 60 damage. He needs 4 bench Pokemon here to do 120 and get the KO, but he hasn't got them, and that is gutting. So here comes the Crushing Hammer. It's a heads, and Luke scoops the first game because there's nothing he can do. He couldn't keep the energy on, and that's absolutely devastating. It is disappointing, but that's what the Seismitoad deck does, and this is what this game is really going to come down to. If Luke can keep his energy on the field, the Mega Rayquaza is going to go straight through Seismitoad, and he's going to win a very quick game. If, however, Shivam can keep hitting those Xerasix, those Team Flare Grunts, those Crushing Hammer, I don't remember if I saw Enhanced Hammer or not, but if he sees all of those, then we're going to see a game very similar to the one we've just seen. There's going to be no real difference. Luke's going to not have any energy, and Shivam is just going to keep getting rid of his energy, and he's going to end up winning, unfortunately, without losing many prizes, as we saw in the last game when the only prize he lost was indeed on the prize card penalty for drawing too many cards. So as we go into game 2 here, it is worth thanking, it's not Wakefield TCG, although the border is still there. I don't recall this footage. I have to thank the lovely Terry Goodacre and Matt Blower. They are the people who set us up, let me have this footage. They do all the recording, etc., and then they literally just whip us a file, so I can add the commentary here. So, huge thanks to those guys. It's not Wakefield TCG. I think they need to fix that border because it wasn't Wakefield TCG for Nottingham Regionals either. And also a huge thanks to Zone Out, the venue in Doncaster at which we played. Free parking directly outside the venue, friendly staff. Yeah, it's just a really good venue, to be honest with you. So, the interesting thing about this tournament, like I've said, is the fact that we got Roaring Skies being legal. And what happens when a new set comes out is that essentially everybody tests with their mates, but you only play against, your mate's list. So you think you're thinking, oh, I can beat that new Rayquaza deck. But then someone comes around with a slightly different list, and all of a sudden it's very, very different. So part of the thing, and that's what's going to be so awkward when we get to UK Nationals. The set becomes legal, I believe, on, I want to say Wednesday the 27th. And it's Saturday the 30th that UK National starts. So there's only 3 days between the set becoming legal and UK National starting. So it's only going to be unsanctioned tournaments like this where you get to test. But like I say, we've got, several Worlds qualified players here and, good players. And they're actually playing for something. So this is going to be, one of the few tournaments where you can really start to see what's working and what's not, which I think it's why I've gone and put all this stuff up and why I think it's very very useful to be watching these. Now, Luke, thank goodness he's going first because he started Execute. Execute has 30 HP, and Shivam, if he was going first, would be able to just play a Laser Verbank and the Execute would die from poison. He wouldn't be able to attack, but he wouldn't need to attack. And as we saw from Shivam in the previous game, the chances are he would be able to get that. He's got a muscle band in hand, so that he would be able to he'd be able to get a Shaymin, and he's got the laser. All he'd need to get is a Verbank. So Luke now plays an Ultra Ball. He's able to get the Rayquaza, and he's got the Raichu on the bench, which I believe he started with. And then he's got the Execute active. Maybe he top decked the Pikachu because, yeah. Now the Execute being in the active is a slight pain. Now you saw that Luke had an escape rope. He's got there in the discard pile as he plays a Shaymin to grab 4 cards. And what he's really going to want to do is play all his trainers because he knows he's going to be trainer locked next turn. He's got the Spirit Link there on the Rayquaza, and there goes a Battle Compressor, so he can discard supporters so that he can VS Seeker them back, although maybe not the best plan against a trainer lock deck because VS Seeker doesn't do you any good because you can't play it, and then there's less supporters in your deck you can draw into. You can get rid of Grass Energy so that you can, Mega Turbo it on, but unless he has a Grass Energy, unless he's got a Mega Turbo and a Mega Rayquaza in his hand, that's going to be no good. And you see there, he just discards a couple of cards because all he's doing there is thinning his deck. He's trying to get rid of cards he doesn't want to draw into. There's no point putting a supporter in a discard pile so you can Mega Turbo it. He's playing a computer search there again because he wants to get it out as soon as he can next turn. And there we go for another Shaymin, just to try and desperately draw through as many cards as he can. There's no point getting a Grass Energy in a discard pile, because if you don't have the Mega Turbo this turn, you're going to be trainer locked and not be able to play it, and that's one less energy to draw into. We saw in the previous game, Luke needs his energy, because Shivan's going to be trying to get rid of them. He doesn't want his supporters in the discard pile to VS Seeker them, because he's going to be train locked out of VS Seeker, and he wants to be drawing into them manually. So there, we've got the Mega Rayquaza, and like I say, the Spirit Link and Delta Evolution combo allows him to get that going. Now, he does have a Mega Turbo there, and he did have a Grass Energy that he discarded, so he's got an energy on there, and it's not a terrible start. He's got 4 Pokemon on the bench, he's got an energy on the Mega Rayquaza, and that Execute is going to die, unless of course Shivam plays a Lysandre to bring something up from the bench. So there's a Crushing Hammer, and it comes up tails. It doesn't appear that Shivam is playing Enhanced Hammer. He's got the Xerosic to get rid of the DCE. So it really is going to come down to like we saw before. So he's getting rid of the Headringer and the Team Flare Grunt. Team Flare Grunt he can't play at the moment because the Execute has no damage, no energy attached. And Team Flare Grunt only gets rid of energy from the active Pokemon. And the Headringer, he could play it onto either the Shaymin just to get it out of his hand, but he wanted to be able to discard something with the Ultra Ball, so it makes sense. So there is the Laser, and it is a Tails, although that's likely to be irrelevant. And he plays a Shaymin there to draw 4. He's got another Shaymin there, and he's got a couple of VS Seeker in his hand, which is far from ideal. I don't believe he's played a supporter yet either, so ideally he's going to want to try and burn a few cards, play the Shaymin, and there's a Team Flare tool on the Shaymin. Like I say, he didn't do it early, he's done it there, purely just to get it out of his hand, so that he's got less cards in his hand. So there he sees a Tails on Super Scoop Up, but there's one less card in his hand, so now he gets to draw some with Shaymin. Oh, we got another VS Seeker, which is not ideal. He doesn't want to be drawing all those VS Seekers. That really isn't going to do him all that much good. But he gets a Seismitoad down, so he's got a pair of them. He plays another Laser. I mean, it's likely to be irrelevant. Luke isn't going to be able to Mega Turbo any energy next turn. He's not going to be able to switch. Although, there is always a chance that Shivam's actually going to whiff a DCE. I keep saying Luke's not going to be able to do this. Luke's not going to be able to do that. But there's no DCE there. And honestly, if Shivam, and there's another Crushing Hammer, and it comes up heads. But if Luke's not, if Luke doesn't end up trainer locked, he's just going to be able to Mega Turbo that back on potentially. So there's an Acrobike there. He's got the Super Scoop Up, Lysandre's trump card, so we can use the Super Scoop Up, assuming he hits a heads, to get a Shaymin back and start drawing more cards. One of the downsides of the Seismitoad decks, as well as some potentially slow starts if you can't get a Shaymin, is that if you don't get any energy, you're only playing 4 DCE, and let's not forget, you may well end up with 1 or 2 of those DCE prized. So, if you can't draw the DCE, this could go very badly. So, another Headringer there, and I was wrong, it seems like he plays at least 3 of them. So, and there he goes with the DCE Muscle Band. So, although, and again, just to qualify my previous statement, yeah, there's a chance you're not going to be able to draw into the DCE here, and there we go, the Execute is dying from the Quaking Punch. Never actually got the Burbank City Gym as it happens, so he wouldn't have been able to get the donk. as much as I say, you might not be able to hit one of only 4 DCE, you saw how many cards Shivam's drawing through. If you draw through a quarter of your deck on average, you should draw it, and I think we can safely say he drew through 15 cards there. So the chances are, you are going to occasionally miss the DCE. I remember when I played Speed Donphan at Nationals a while ago, back with Broken Time Space, a Donphan Prime. There were, I think, 2 games in a row. I played, 6 Fighting Energy, or maybe 9. It was either 6 or 9, and I drew through literally half my deck in the first turn and whiffed. That happened twice in the tournament, so it can happen, but it's statistically unlikely it shouldn't. So Luke here is in an awkward position. There's no energy on the board, so we're not going to see his big attack this turn. We're not going to see him KOing a Seismitoad. Not only that, but he's got, he's only actually got 5 bench Pokemon. There's no Skyfield there. So we see the Grass Energy, and Luke here, he's I don't know if he's got a DCE in hand. He has, yes, but the Grass Energy is a way to go. The Grass Energy can only be discarded by a heads on a Crushing Hammer. There's a Scoop Up Cyclone. The preferred ace spec there so that you can, deliberately get them back. And that's key. Now, I was just in the middle of saying that putting the Grass down is better than putting a DCE down, because it can't be Crushing Hammered. It can only be Crushing Hammered off or Team Flare Grunt, but it would have to be active. Whereas the DCE could be Xerosicked off. And just as we say that, he plays a Xerosick to get rid of the... he plays a Xerosick to get rid of the Spirit Link, and then pops a Head Ringer on there. So now that Rayquaza needs 4 energy, and that Rayquaza isn't going to be attacking next turn. He can't attack next turn. He needs 4 energy to attack now, and Luke can only attach 2 per turn. Now, he's already 2 prizes down. He's got to put a Pikachu up there, but this is getting awkward very, very fast. Now, the one thing which Luke can rely on in this game is the fact that Rayquaza just needs, 4 energy. And he can easily just go KO, KO, KO. He can easily take 6 prizes in 3 turns if he can keep some energy on. But it's a combination of, and there's a Lysandre, he's hoping that there's going to be no energy to retreat or Super Scoop Up. No, he's already used his Scoop Up Cyclone. He's played a couple of Super Scoop Ups, so there is the possibility. And there's a heads there to get rid of the DCE. That is huge. There is a possibility that he's not going to be able to draw a Super Scoop Up. Now, he has got a DCE in hand he can use to retreat the Shaymin, and there's no reason why he wouldn't. He's already got DCE on 2 different Seismitoads. Luke, it doesn't appear at least, is playing Enhanced Hammer, and Shivam's just going to be able to Lysandre's trump card to get the energy back in the deck. So even though he's only playing 4, since he's already got 2 down, there really is no major downside to wasting 1 retreat in the Shaymin. So there is a Lysandre on the Shaymin. He's bringing the Shaymin active, and he's going to be able to do 50 damage. And next turn, if he can do that 50 damage again and play a laser, then he's going to be able to KO the Shaymin and go down to 2 prizes. Given that he is already 1 game up, it's starting to look pretty good for Shivam here. It's starting to look quite tidy. So we see the Skyfield go down from Luke, and he's playing a Juniper, and it's hard to think what he wants to draw into here. I mean, energy, of course, is key, preferably a basic Grass Energy, so that he can attach the Grass to Rayquaza and then go DCE next turn. Because again, the Grass is harder to get rid of. Essentially, Crushing Hammer can get rid of either of them, and then Xerosick can get rid of the DCE from the bench, whereas Team Flare Grunt can get rid of either if he's active. So the Grass Energy is safer there. He's less likely to lose the Grass Energy than he is to lose the double colourless. So it is the better play. And there we see the Verbank City Gym to get rid of the Skyfield. He doesn't need the extra damage from the laser here. Just a single laser will KO the Shaymin. And we see the Crushing Hammer comes up tails, which is good. If Shivam can't hit a Crushing Hammer heads this turn, now Luke is going to need a couple of things. He's going to need, well, assuming that Shaymin goes down, Luke would need another 2 bench Pokemon and the Skyfield Stadium, so that he's got 6 and it would add up to 180 damage. That would be the ideal here. Of course, if there is no laser and the Shaymin doesn't die, that kind of presents a weird dynamic. It gives Luke one more turn to attach energy on the bench, but it kind of gives Shivam one more turn to try and get rid of that energy on the bench. Because Luke's not getting that Shaymin out of the active. He can't play an escape rope. Now, I happen to know he only plays one, and we saw it go into discard very early game. And he's not going to use an energy to retreat, but that's irrelevant, of course, because there goes the laser. Now, this is the absolute crucial turn. There are 2 prizes left. Luke is going to have to knock out 3 KOs in a row here, or else he is going to lose. There is no options there. But we see an N. Now, I did suggest, a lot of these Rayquaza decks are going to be largely playing Juniper, but you'd imagine most of them probably only playing 1 N for situations like this, but that is absolutely huge. Luke is going to be getting 6 cards, and presumably going to be playing Shaymin and all as well, if he can draw one. Shivam's going down to 2 cards, and this might actually make a difference here. Now, are we going to be able to see his hand? I can't see what's in his hand. There is a possibility that he just draws something like Pokemon Tools, or, he's got a Juniper. That is gutting. Now, don't get me wrong, with all the stuff that Shivam's playing, he's got so many outs here, and he's got quite a slow deck. But we see there, we've got the Sky Field, we've got 5 bench Pokemon. He needs a 6th. He's got to get a bench Pokemon here to get the KO. Now, if he gets a bench Pokemon here, of course, and he's got the Execute and the discard, so he can just propagate the Execute, pop it on the bench, and he's got the KO. Now, this is going to be the turn. Shivam, and he's got an Acrobike there as well. Now here's an interesting thing. Now, I don't know how much I agree with this or not. Luke's got a DCE in hand, and we know now that's lost Shivam the game here. That is absolutely crucial. Now, for Shivam's point of view, he kind of had to do that. He could either play the Team Flare Grunt to get rid of the energy and hope Luke didn't have the DCE, and I think Luke had already used 3, so I think that was his last one, or he could play the Juniper. The problem is here, he gambled on the Team Flare Grunt, and he could have hit something like a, we see the As there to try and draw more cards with a Shaymin. But then again, Shivam's used 3 DCEs here. We've seen him have 2 on Seismitoads. We've also saw him use 1 to retreat the Shaymin, and I think Luke might have this here. Shivam has got this 1 turn. Luke's already got enough energy on the Shaymin. Shivam needs to get rid of them, and maybe he doesn't have enough Crushing Hammers here. And if he doesn't have enough Crushing Hammers, then the only choice he had was to play that Team Flare Grunt. And like I say, if Luke was down to 1 DCE, it was probably fair for Shivam to assume that maybe he didn't have it. Now, that's the other thing that Shivam can do here. Play the Verbank City Gym to get rid of the Skyfield. Having said that, Shaymin's only got... And that's game. Luke's got this game because he doesn't need to have 6 Pokemon down to KO the Shaymin. He only needs 4 to do 120. And that brilliantly, the 2 games we've seen so far, brilliantly encapsulates these 2 new decks from Roaring Skies. In Game 1, we saw Shivam do what Seismitoad is supposed to do. He had his super scoop-ups, he drew an insane amount of cards, he got rid of all Luke's energy, and Luke had absolutely nothing he could do. Whereas in Game 2, Shivam did a very similar thing, but even with getting rid of, and he discarded a bunch of Luke's energy, and he managed to get rid of, and it looks like he isn't playing Startling Megaphone, so we had to use Xerasic to get rid of the Spirit Link, and then he managed to get the Head Ringer on there to increase the cost of the attack by 1. And after all of that, and he didn't play any differently to Game 1, he didn't play badly. It was just Luke had the opportunity to build up a Rayquaza with enough energy and take a prize, or take 2 prizes, at which point Shivam was only able to get rid of 1 of the free energy cards attached to the Rayquaza, and he went for the double colourless energy, which was, like I say, potentially dodgy because he had no support Seismitoad set up, but given that I believe that was Luke's last double colourless energy, it was the sensible play, and I agree with him using Team Flare Grunt rather than the Juniper, but Luke had the other DCE, knocked out the second Seismitoad in a row, and that really was it. Now, you could argue that Shivam should keep 3 Seismitoads out with double colourless energies on for situations like that. And then, Luke would have needed the Skyfield in that final turn to get the final KO. Of course, had he got the Skyfield, he could have just, again, propagated the Execute to get 6 Pokemon on the bench and get the KO. But, we're saying all of these things, but in reality, okay, maybe he gets 3 Seismitoad out. Well, now he's only got 3 bench spots for Shaymin, and as we've seen with the way Shivam's playing the deck, he's drawing through his deck so well that you could argue he needs to have 4 bench spots for Shaymin. Did he really think he was going to lose 2 Seismitoads in 2 turns with all the opportunities he's got to get rid of Luke's energy? Now, in terms of the game as a whole, and we got a split sleeve there, which is just being repaired by Shivam. Now, there is going to be a slight time extension, I believe, on this game, given that there was the judge ruling earlier in Game 1. But we're going to have a draw here. Unfortunately, it's going to happen. Because even though the format's gone both kind of faster and slower. The format's gotten faster in terms of, we see a mulligan there from Shivam, so Luke's going to go second, but start with an extra card. Hopefully he's not starting Execute, and if he is, hopefully he draws out of it. Oh, that is not a good opening hand. 3 DCE, and he's got an Ultra Ball there, which can help him get a Shaymin, but he doesn't really want to be discarding DCE when, Shivam's going to be getting rid of enough of his energy. But in a weird way, like I say, the format's getting faster in terms of you can do more things per turn. You can play more cards per turn. But because of that, the format's getting slower in that your turns take forever. Now, arguably there's less turns per game, but having, in a matchup like this, that's certainly not true because you've got one deck that's desperately trying to pile energy on and another deck which is desperately trying to get rid of energy while doing really not that much damage. But you'll see consistency-wise here with Shaymin and all of that, both these decks are almost ludicrously consistent at this stage. So Shivam's going to get his first turn, and he's going to be going for the Muscle Band and the Verbank and the Laser and the DCE. Well, he started DCE Muscle Band, so that's quite good. We see a Pokemon Center Lady. That's a potentially odd card to go into Seismitoad Shaymin, with it being such a speed deck. But and there's the first Shaymin of the game. I'm sure it'll be far from the last. In fact, it's not going to be the last this turn. But one of the weird things we see is that because you've got Shaymin drawing so many cards, and you see Shivam's playing Acrobike as well, and he's far from the only person doing so. Because you're playing so much non-supporter draw, you can actually get away with playing a bunch of non-draw supporters. You can, justify playing your Xerosic, your Team Flare Grunt, your Pokemon Center Lady, because we're not back, and I don't quite know what he's doing here. I don't know if I agree with this play at all. Because he's used an awful lot of Super Scoop-Ups, and he's drawing very, very few cards. I suppose, the head ring is good there. He's trying to stop the turn 1 Rayquaza. And I suppose I can get on board with that. The problem is he's expended an awfully large amount of resources. And if Luke gets a Rayquaza going, then Shivam is really going to be wanting to, slow him down. And in order to slow him down, he's going to need to draw cards. And he's just used an awful lot of resources on that first turn of the game. So, potentially dodgy. And let's not forget that in order to get the turn 1 KO, Luke would need a Spirit Link, a Mega Rayquaza, a DCE, an Energy in the discard, a Mega Turbo, a Skyfield, and 6 bench Pokemon. Doable? Absolutely. Realistic? No. And I suppose it's how you want to play. Now, Shivam is going for the cautious play here. He's essentially gone, I don't think you're going to get this. But then again, Luke here could try and do the same thing with the bench Rayquaza, and he just needs an escape rope on top of that. And there's a Skyfield as well. I think this is a dodgy play from Shivam here. I think he's just used too many resources on the first turn of the game. And this game isn't going to go long. We're clearly going to go to time and get a draw, just in case anyone's wondering. I don't know exactly how long has elapsed in this game, but enough that looking at the previous 2 games, we're not going to have a finish here. We're going to have a draw. But what's curious to me is he's used so many resources turn one. He's used a super scoop. He's got 2 Shaymin, and I think we saw maybe 3 super scoop ups, at least 2 Shaymin, 1 scoop up, and 1 scoop up Cyclone. Now, he's still got plenty of resources, don't get me wrong. He's going to have plenty of opportunities to use more stuff, but if you're using that many resources on turn 1, you want to be setting up a lot more than 1 Seismitoad with a Muscle Band and a DCE. And a Headringer. Because as Luke's just shown, Luke can play around Headringers by just going for another Rayquaza. But, like I say, what's going to happen in this game is Shivam's going to do a lot of not very much damage and slow him down. Luke, if he gets a Rayquaza, like we saw in the previous game, it's going to take him a while. And the reality is that we're not going to see an end to this game. Now, he's got the Spirit Link, which is nice. He doesn't appear to have the Rayquaza EX, and he doesn't have the Mega Turbo, and he passes to Shivam there, and this was the turn. Now, interestingly, Luke is going to be able to use that. There was an argument there, and it's not personally what I would have gone for, just so we're clear, and there goes a DCE. There was an argument that Luke should have put a DC on the active Rayquaza, so that he could use the first attack to do 60 to the Seismitoad, especially given how many resources Shivam has had to use to get that first Seismitoad out. And we see, and there's a Headringer on the other Rayquaza. And there's the AZ, and get Shaymin, there's more Shaymins there, and a Super Scoop Up. But you got to be thinking, from Shivam's point of view, how many resources does he need here? And he's going straight for the Super Scoop Up there, and I disagree with these plays. He's still got, look at his discard to his deck. He's got a lot of deck there. He plays a Shaymin for 1 card, but what's he going for? He's got the Quaking Punch, and he's got the Muscle Band, and he's got rid of all of Luke's energy. I suppose maybe a Verbank Laser. Oh, and he's still going another Shaymin for 1 card. So I think I've lost count. I want to say he's got 3 Shaymin, 4 Super Scoop Up there. And look how much of his deck is still there. In the first 2 games, he wasn't doing that. And a cautionary tale for anyone playing Shaymin, think about why you're dropping the Shaymin. If you've got a decent setup, you don't need to play the Shaymin now. And now, this opens up this play for Luke. Now, Luke has seen, there's a Scoop Up Cyclone. That's so unlucky on Luke's part. Because Luke has basically seen exactly what I've seen. Hang on a second, I think he's just used all of his Super Scoop Ups. And he's played, 3 of his Shaymin. I don't think he's going to be able to get this Shaymin out of the active. So he plays a Lysandra to try and buy him a turn, and he hits his Scoop Up Cyclone. And that is harsh. Now, Shivam's going to have to try and play a Lysandra trump card quite soon. And honestly, I would consider, and we see another Shaymin for 1 energy, for 1 card, and he hits the tails on that. I don't know quite what he's going for here, because the whole point is you want to be drawing through a huge amount of your deck every turn to draw your resources to slow down your opponent. He has played many, many Shaymin here for a single card each, and that's not what Shaymin's doing. Shaymin is not draw 1 card. Shaymin is draw up to 6. And if you're using it for 1 card, you're really slowing yourself down. Now, I'd like to see him here, VS Seeker for... I'd like to see him get something like a Juniper. I suppose AZ would do fine, but look at his hand. Does he really want a Shaymin? He wants a Juniper. And then, play Lysandra's trump. And he had to play Lysandra's trump card way too early in the game to do so. But he's just used so many Shaymin for 1 energy each that... for one card each. So that really is... I don't know what he's going for. If you look at the board, he's basically completely in control. Even if you bear in mind that the Rayquaza on the bench has an energy and doesn't have a Headringer on, so could potentially attack with a DCE, that active Rayquaza isn't going anywhere. That active Rayquaza has 180 HP. He's got 70 HP left. Luke ain't playing an escape rope under trainer lock. Luke isn't going to put an energy on it to retreat it, and even if he does, he's not going to be able to attack with the other Rayquaza. So there really is no reason to desperately run through his deck. What Shivam wants to do is stop Luke playing. And the best way to do that is set up a Seismitoad and go. Now, if Luke is setting up a load of energy, if it looks like Luke is going to attack the very next turn, then Shivam wants to go, right, now it's worth playing a Shaymin for one card. You know, if you're playing a Stage 2 deck and you need that rare candy, it's worth playing a Shaymin for one card. If he needs to get rid of the Skyfield, if he needs to get a Headringer, then in those situations, absolutely, play a Shaymin for one card. But in this situation, Luke isn't threatening next turn. What he wants to do is really have a think, play down the cards he can, and then, you know, try and sort out his hand for explosive turns. And just constantly going Shaymin for one card, Shaymin for one card, Shaymin for one card, he's actually wasting his cards here. And what's going to happen, you know, and Luke got very, very unlucky when Shivam got his scoop up Cyclone in the previous turn. Because honestly, there was many situations there where potentially Luke could have Lysandra the Shaymin, and again we're going for three cards there, but I wouldn't have put the DCE down on the Seismitoad, because if Luke plays a Lysandra, and we've already seen that Luke is a fan of using Lysandra to drag up the Shaymin to try and buy a turn of no trainer lock, and in his situation I certainly would be as well, I don't think he's got a super scoop up in hand. So he needs an energy spare to try and retreat the Shaymin. He does play Enhanced Hammer. We haven't seen any yet, which means there were turns previously when he really should have been getting rid of the grass energy, not the DCE. You know, and then search for the Enhanced Hammer to get rid of the DCE. But here, if I'm Shivam, I don't want to put myself in a situation where I could potentially, you know, have something Lysandra up and then fail. Now, again, I don't see what that laser's in aid of there. I suppose, you know, the laser allows him to draw extra cards, the DC allows him to draw extra cards. I suppose, and actually here, now this turn, I'm slightly more in favour of it. Doing the maths there, that Rayquaza that's active is going to die, so there is a situation here where Luke is able to hit a DCE, Mega Rayquaza, Skyfield, couple of Pokemon, and is able to get the KO next turn. So I'm okay with having a second Seismitoad built up, you know, dropping a DCE there, because Luke can get the KO next turn. And similarly, I am all in favour of, you know, playing the lasers to get rid of cards so you can draw more. However, no, I was just trying to do the maths with the laser, but no, it would get KO'd even if there was no Verbank City Gym in play. So this turn, I'm alright with what he's doing. The previous turn, I wasn't such a big fan of, you know, drawing through all that stuff. Drawing through stuff is good. I wasn't such a fan of, you know, and there were many times he played Shaymin for one card. One thing that people are going to kind of have to learn as we go forward with Shaymin is there's a time to drop Shaymin and there's a time to not. If you've got a Shaymin in hand, but you've got everything you need for this turn, there is an argument for just saying, I'm done. I'm not dropping a Shaymin for one card, because next turn, maybe I draw, you know, an Ultra Ball and I can get rid of a couple of cards, and then I can play a Shaymin for more when I need more. Now, this is going to be the key turn for Luke here. I love the Virizion play there by Luke. Rayquaza's a colourless Pokemon. All the Pokemon Luke's attacking with, Raichu included, attack for colourless energy. So you need to put some basic energy in for Mega Turbo. You can go for whatever flavour energy you like. He goes for grass flavoured energy because he can then play a single copy of Virizion, and that means that he's got immunity for his Pokemon from special conditions, most prominently laser. Although there's going to be niche situations where you're going to need it for things other than laser. So popping a Virizion there, I think one copy of it in a deck like this is brilliant. Now let's not forget, he could also use it to Emerald Slash. 2 grass energy, and he's able to Emerald Slash, and maybe if he's got enough in his deck, attach grass energy to his benched Rayquazas. So it's not something he's going to do often, but something he could do. He's not gone for it. Oh, and he's got the attack this turn, although he's only got it for 120. Which is disappointing. It does, however, mean he's going to be able to get the KO. Oh, that's key. It does mean, however, he's going to be able to get the KO with a regular Rayquaza EX, even if there's a head ringer on it, with just a double colourless energy, essentially with one energy attachment. Now, going for the DCE there is a decent call, especially with a Team Flare Grant, and that shows how Shivam's deck is quite so devastating. Because, here he needed to get rid of the energy, and it's going to be easier for Luke to get a grass energy than it is to get a DCE. So if he can potentially only get rid of one energy, then the DCE is the one to get rid of. Now Luke is in a bind here. He's not going to be able to attack this turn. And yeah, now what you saw there was essentially, we're out of time. Time has been called. They look at the field. Shivam's not doing enough damage to take enough prizes. Luke, even if he gets set up perfectly, isn't going to take 6 prizes in 2 turns. He can do it in 3, but not in 2. And bearing in mind, he couldn't have his use of Mega Turbo. So, long game, ending in a draw. Not ideal, but I think what we saw from this game, and I'm glad this video went up. I'm glad we had these 2 chaps on stream to start off with. Because what we saw here is, we saw Shaymin Seismitoad doing what it does, and we saw Rayquaza doing what it does. And a draw, I think, is, to be honest, fairly appropriate given everything we saw. I'm going to be putting at least rounds 1 to 5 up, and hopefully we're going to see a top 8, top 4 and top 2 game going up on my channel as well. I've got the first 5 rounds, so there's no problem with that, and I'm hopefully getting the top cut in the next couple of days. So keep checking back to my YouTube channel, ladies and gentlemen. Come and watch some proper games played with good players under tournament conditions with Roaring Skies. I don't know who else is doing that at the moment, but don't worry about it. You can get it from me. And as always, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you do so. Drop a comment down below. Follow me on Twitter at TheWassy. And of course, check out my podcast, PTCGRadio, if you're not doing so already. Tell your friends, spread the word. I'm going to be back very shortly with round 2 from this lovely tournament. And look after yourselves till then.